fractions. This video is going to be on adding and subtracting fractions. So let's start with this cake example here that I've drawn. I've cut it into slices, and there's 8 slices. There's 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So before we start with fractions, there's 2 things we need to know. We need to know what a numerator is, and we need to know what a denominator is. So numerator, denominator. Okay, so the denominator is the number that goes on the bottom. The numerator is the number that goes on the top. But the numerator and denominator can also represent something. The denominator represents how many pieces in total the whole has been cut into. So in other words, when you look at this whole cake, before it was cut up into slices, it was a whole. It was just by itself. There was no slices. But then when you cut it, how many slices are there in total? And so you can always number them, like what I did over here. I said I put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I got my denominator. So the denominator in this case would be 8. The numerator would be how many pieces you own, how many slices somebody else owns out of the whole cake. So in this case, let's say you went to a birthday party and you got 3 slices. So you would own 3 out of the 8 slices. So really, it's just a really simple concept. And for adding and subtracting fractions, which is going to be the focus of this video, adding and subtracting fractions, we're going to go over how to do that, but it's really easy when you think about it. It's as long as you know how to add and subtract. That's really what it is. It's going to be just this really quick video on how to do it. So let's say you have 1/8. So in this case, you have 1/8 of the cake, and your best friend comes up to you and he just got 3 slices but doesn't really want to eat them anymore. And so 1/8 plus 3/8 equals 4/8. See what I did here? All I did was add the 1 and then add the 3, and I got 1 plus 3 equals 4. And now you may ask yourselves, don't you also do 8 plus 8, which equals 16, making it 4/16? But you don't. When you're adding or subtracting fractions and the denominators, so the 2 denominators or the 3 denominators you're adding or subtracting, or how many denominators you have in your question, if they are the same, they stay the same. So it's really easy to remember. If they are the same, in the next step, they stay the same. So let's do another question. But before we do, I would like to mention that although this is, for somebody who's starting out with fractions, it's more of a complex concept, you can break down for it, because I'm going to just highlight it here. You can skip to the next part if you don't get it, but, sorry. So technically, 4/8, which is this part of the cake, that wasn't the best drawing, but it'll do. 4/8 is actually equal to half of the cake. You would get it by dividing, but if you don't know dividing, I think we're just going to stay to a more simple concept. But I just wanted to address that you can simplify it, because 4/8 of this cake is actually half of it, and it does make sense. If you look at this cake over here, if you had 4 slices, you would have half the cake. So I'm just going to put in brackets, very small, half. If you don't get it, I'll make another video on how to multiply and divide fractions. So let's go with subtracting fractions here. Now that we know how to add fractions, there's one question here. Let's do how to subtract fractions. So it's pretty much the same as adding fractions. Let's say you have 7/8 of the cake, and somebody just gave you this whole cake, 7/8 of it, but you can't finish 7/8, so you decide to give it out to other people. and let's say you give out um, 4 of it. Let's say you give out 4/8 of the cake. You give out half of the cake. Um, how many slices do you have? Or how much of the cake do you have? In this case, you would have 3. And remember, when it's the same denominator, it stays the same. The same rule applies for adding and subtracting. So you would keep the 8 here, and you would have 8. So it would be equal to 3/8. And this was the really short video on adding and subtracting fractions. I hope it made sense.